Welcome to presentation number 18 in our series Rereading Revelation. We are in the section of Revelation dealing with the cosmic conflict unambiguously, chapters 12 to 14, and I have put a title on it, The Cosmic Conflict from A to Z. And we are now doing chapter 13, the last part of chapter 13. So this is part 2. The dragon acts, and the verses we are covering, not so many, Revelation 13, 11 to 18. And just to review our outline here, cosmic conflict from A to Z, now part 2, this part. But we did in chapter 12 the cosmic conflict in 3 parts. The beginning of the conflict, the middle of the conflict with a great sign, and the ending of the conflict, a kind of preview of the ending. Now we are here, and then yet to come. Here the dragon acts, here God reacts in chapter 14. And we will look at that next time. This is what we're doing today, the beast from the earth. And in the Trinity Apocalypse, we have the beast from the sea here, and the beast from the earth here. And these two animals, these two beasts are interacting. They have a game plan, as it were, between the two of them. And behind their game plan, of course, is the dragon, because this is part of the section we have called the dragon reacts, or the dragon acts, the dragon acts here. But just as for the sea beast, the earth beast has also been the subject of tremendous interest and what almost amounts to scholarly consensus, what it means. So we are not spared to look at that. Here is a magnified image, magnified picture of Edith from Albrecht Dürer's view of the beast, depiction of the beast, and this is the sea beast. This is the earth beast, this is the beast from the earth. We had the sea beast last time. And here we have the curriculum for these beasts. We have Roman imperial reality, we have the imperial cult, we have the life of Nero, and we saw that the preterist school of interpretation thinks that the beast from the sea is the Roman Empire, and specifically the Roman Emperor Nero. And now we will see what is said about the beast from the earth here, again with very specific positions on that subject. I showed you a portion of this, what David Barr, one Revelation scholar, says about the section we're in now, and I have shortened it even more. There is a pattern of action and reaction in these chapters. In chapter 13, the dragon acts. In chapter 14, we could say God reacts. And here then he says the dragon acts and God reacts. This is the dragon story, at least certainly in chapter 13. That would be appropriate to say. And this is a sort of helpful way of positioning ourselves. Whose story is it? Is it the story of the Roman Empire? Is it the story of history in general terms? We're curious what lies ahead. We'd like to know. Or is it a project telling about cosmic powers, God on one side, someone on the other side who is not a human being and who is not as such a historical figure exactly, not like humans, the dragon story. That's the point. When I came to the University of St. Andrews to do my dissertation on the book of Revelation, I said I want to do the cosmic perspective. And they said, why do you want to do that? Because everyone knows that the book of Revelation is a thinly veiled critique of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire is in the foreground. The cosmic aspect is just background noise. And I said, I think it's the other way around. It is the cosmic perspective that is the foreground. That is what carries the story. And yes, there are historical points of contact, but it is not the historical points of contact. It is the primary thing. And then I should say that too. I was sleepless in St. Andrews over this because I felt that my wonderful supervisors were skeptical of my project. And then when I was done, my main advisor said, I will never read Revelation the same way again. And he was the one who arranged for me to write a commentary on Revelation in an American commentary series. So much for that. Let's read about the beast from the earth here in Revelation 13. Then I saw another beast that rose out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb. That's the first piece of information we get. And here we have an image to go with it, a lamb. And immediately we have to say, a lamb. And something in relation to the dragon's territory, this is quite surprising, because the lamb, of course, is the main figure in the book of Revelation on God's side. It is the lamb that defines God in the book of Revelation. It is the lamb that was seen in the middle, as though he had been killed by violence. That's the figure that defines God. And we see here throughout Revelation now, not this lamb, but that other one. Here in verse after verse, chapter 5 and 6, and all the way through the book, there is the lamb and the lamb and its wound. So what to make of this when you have lookalikes here, as it were? Well, the first thing that follows is that the lamb here must be a figure of imitation. It must be an attempt to imitate Jesus, as it were. And then we read that it spoke like a serpent. So there is in some ways a discrepancy between appearance and reality, although you could say that there is no discrepancy. This is exactly the kind of disguise that the dragon would prefer. So let's put the contrast in, though, and say that the appearance is benign, but it's a lamb, but the reality is ominous because it speaks like the serpent. It messages another message than you would have expected from a lamb, as it were. And then, so here we can say that we have forged identities here in both of these 2 beasts. We have the mortal wound of the first beast, and now we have a lamb-like appearance here in the second. So these 2 are reinforcing the notion of imitation here. And here we have pictures. This is the Zeus apocalypse. This is the beast from the sea. And this is the beast that is supposed to look like a lamb. I'm not exactly sure. I think in some ways they have overdone it, that these images do not succeed in conveying the imitative features in the text. There should have been a wound here. And this maybe should look more lamb-like. That's the Jews' apocalypse. We have another one here. So let's begin again. Let's read from the beginning again. I saw another beast arising from the earth. And I have as headline here, earth, as location, of course, and as a figure of speech, as metaphor. And the welcome apocalypse has a kind of clean image. These are clean. It's not a crowded image here. The lamb arising from the earth and some figure here. I actually think that this figure is a demonic figure. So there is a kind of sense of the lamb coming from the earth in response to some activity behind the scenes here. But what about it? The beast rises from the earth, and Revelation has already made us expect good things from the earth. The earth is a safe place, because we read in Revelation chapter 12, just a few verses earlier, that when the dragon pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child in Revelation 12, when that happened, the earth came to the help of the woman. It opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured from his mouth. And we have the illustration here, the Cambrai apocalypse, showing the dragon pouring a flood of water after the woman to swallow her up. But the earth opens its mouth and swallows the river. So the earth then is on the woman's side. It is on the side of good. And now we are disappointed, as it were. I think it is legitimate to feel a little disappointed. There should not be any problem arising from the earth. But maybe this it helps us a little. The dragon took his stand on the sand of the seashore. You have land and you have sea, as it were, and the dragon will play both fields. That's the connotation there. I think this explanation by William Johnson, who I consider a friend and a good New Testament scholar, he has said the following: the vision is saying, in the region of apparent safety, the dragon will work deceptively to continue its warfare against the woman. The region of apparent safety, the desert, the earth, it doesn't stop. And I have commented in my commentary, peril appears where it is least expected. All right, we can read on. And I mentioned the preterist school of interpretation and their claims on the beast from the earth here. So to do a little bit of background here, I want to show a couple of books. And as much as I take issue with some of the interpretations on these books, I would highly recommend them. They are very well researched, very well laid out, and very informative. So this is Simon Price's book. He was an Oxford professor of history. The book is called Rituals and Power, and it has a subtitle, The Roman Imperial Cult in Asia Minor. And this book has been very influential in giving people ideas about what this means, what these images in Revelation 13, what they mean. Here is another book. This is by Stephen Friesen, who is a professor in Austin in Texas, and a very, very astute scholar who knows oodles about the imperial cult in Asia Minor, and who also has interesting perspectives on Revelation. Title, Imperial Cults and the Apocalypse of John. So he will say that there is some relationship between John's apocalypse and the cults of the Roman Empire. Reading Revelation in the ruins of the Roman Empire. What do you find? And here are some findings. This is from Simon Price's book, published in 1984. The obvious candidate for this figure here is the priesthood of the imperial cult, particularly in the context of this text of the province of Asia. Now, here is just one comment here. I think Simon Price does an excellent job of explaining the role of the imperial cult and the aspirations of the imperial cult within the context of the Roman Empire. I have no reservations about that. It is very informative, and it is also relevant to the way religion functions in our societies even today. The political religions of communism in the East, and the way religion functions in Western countries today, too. So it's not irrelevant to understanding some of those dynamics. It isn't quite sufficient for what Revelation is up to, but it is valuable in many ways. Here is Stephen Friesen, who I have met and corresponded with a little, and I would love to go on a trip with him to some of these sites. I have thought about doing that because I know I would learn from him. Here is what he says. Notice my headline, Identifying the Earth Beast in Revelation. It is dangerous to say that anything in Revelation is clear. That's appropriate humility. Nevertheless, it is safe to conclude that references to imperial cults within the text of Revelation come only in the last half of the book, specifically in chapter 13 to 19. So here, it was kind of fuzzy, it was kind of murky earlier, but when we get to chapter 13, things are clearer. We can find the persuasive reference for these figures. And here is one more, and this is Richard Bauckham, who was one of my supervisors at the St. Andrews, and whose book I value all of them, and I value them a lot. And here is what he says. The second beast, or earth monster, 13:11, this one, elsewhere in Revelation called the false prophet, who promotes the imperial cult by setting up the image of the beast, giving it godlike characteristics, and enforcing its worship, probably represents the imperial priesthood in the cities of the province of Asia. So there is, these are weighty voices, and there are many more like them who see it this way. So we will break, and I will not critique this view yet. We are going now to read the text and learn more about the beast from the earth. And it performs spectacular signs, so that it even makes fire come down from heaven to earth in the sight of people. And it deceives those who dwell on the earth through the signs that it has been commissioned to perform before the beast, saying to those who live on the earth to make an image to the beast that was struck by the sword and yet came to life. That is the beast from the sea. So here the earth beast comes as a kind of PR or promoter of the earlier beasts, and it makes fire come down from heaven. And the fire that comes down from heaven has a persuasive impact. As far as I know, no one in the preterist school has made a very persuasive proposal for the meaning of that fire from heaven. There are some other things where they have tried to make it work, but the fire from heaven seems to be a biblical image. Here again, you have in the Trinity Apocalypse, the earth beast coming here, fire from heaven, and then promoting the interests of the first beast here with people with a body language of the devotion or worship. So, what do? We go to the Old Testament. Yet again, we go to the Old Testament. And here is that story in 1 Kings, the story of the time in Israel of King Ahab and the prophet Elijah. And let's read what happens, and we will look at the picture in a moment. Again, this is Elijah, who after a period of drought that he says was the cause, a kind of ecological consequence of Israelites, of the apostasy of the Israelites, he calls for a summit on Mount Carmel. And let's see what they propose to do. So he says to the other side, and the other side are those who worship Baal, the Canaanite god. So he says, let 2 bulls be given to us. Let them choose 1 bull for themselves, cut it in pieces, and lay it on the wood, but put no fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and lay it on the wood. Yes, I missed my point there. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by fire is indeed God. All the people answered, well spoken. Fair enough. That is a test where there is no sort of ambiguity. If the God answers by fire, that must be it. And the rest of the story, the priests of Baal, they pray to their God, and they do all kinds of contortions and commotion, and it doesn't happen. Nothing happens. And then Elijah prays to God, to Yahweh, and God answers by fire. And the people say, the Lord, he is God, the Lord, he is God. But the book of Revelation confounds these images from the Old Testament, because here, that miracle in the Old Testament that decisively settled who is the true God has now been appropriated by the false side. It is now not God, but the other side that makes fire come down from heaven, as here. So this shows the magnitude of what this power is capable of doing, and it also shows that God is no longer identifying himself as the God who makes fire come down from heaven like that. There is a revision of meanings here. Then it also says here, we read on in Revelation 13, the land beast, it was commissioned to give breath to the image of the beast, in order that the image to the beast might even speak, and to ensure that those who would not worship the image of the beast would be killed. So here you are creating something that you are using coercively. But it isn't only coercive, it is persuasive before it is coercive. The persuasion is if you're able to give breath to the image of the beast and to make it even speak, then who is to blame for thinking that that must be God? That is supernatural. Who is to blame when you know that these images are so strong? Here in Genesis chapter 2, God formed man from the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. Here, the notion of giving breath to an inanimate object, an inanimate being, is in some ways alluding to the story of creation, or humans being given breath. Here, this is William Blake's illustration of God breathing the breath of life into a lifeless body, as it were. And then it could even speak. It could even speak. What about speech? Now the serpent said to the woman, but serpents don't usually speak. That is another feature then of what is happening here. So we have fire from heaven. We have animation of an inanimate object, and we have speech. There are biblical antecedents, and these images are huge. Is there anything in Roman imperial reality to match it? That's what we are questioning. That's what we are in some ways critiquing a little. Here in the Angers tapestry, Apocalypse, we have the earth beast here, and calling for worship. This is the image of the beast, as it were, the sea beast. And here, those who are not complying, they are subject to violence. They are killed. So this is what we have. Now, is there anything in Roman imperial reality, in the choreography of the imperial cult, for instance? Since our preterists say that there is that the earth beast is the imperial priesthood, and there is one under the notion that this is language that is meant to be a parody of the true. So here is from an article published in 1984 by a Harvard scholar. This is from a feast, a religious feast taking place in some Roman temple in Asia Minor. And this is the Roman historian Lucian reporting this to us. As he wished to astonish the crowd still more, he, that is to say the priest, he promised to produce the god talking, delivering oracles in person without a prophet. It was no difficult matter for him to fasten cranes' windpipes, crane is a bird, cranes' windpipes together and pass them through the head of the idol, which is Asclepius, pass them through the head of the head, which he had so fashioned as to be lifelike. Then he answered the questions through someone else who spoke into the tube from the outside, so that the voice that issued from his canvas was that of Asclepius. Here the priest talks to the god. He talks to the image, and the image seems to talk back in someone else's voice. It is a kind of staged miracle. So this works as parody. This works as was that what Revelation had in mind? It had this idea that someone was able, that the Roman imperial cult was able to do that. Or is Revelation's idea of the sort of miracle taking place here under the auspices of the earth beast something of a much bigger magnitude? That's what we are asking. So people have asked these questions. But if this beast, the earth beast, represents propaganda for the emperor cult, how could it be lamb-like enough to deceive Christians? And the answer is, well, you'll have to say that the parody was also persuasive in a way, but I think Sweet, a British scholar whom I also have met and who was very sweet man, he asked this question, and I think he asks exactly the right question. And here is another one by Louis Vos from looking at Revelation in relation to the Synoptic Gospels. And he says the delimitation of this second beast with the priestly cult of John's day, whether it be the heathen priesthood or the imperial priesthood of the provinces, is too restrictive. Yes, you might say that. Let's add it up. Just add up a couple of points and then read the rest of the chapter. Fire from heaven, breath and speech. Here are 3 points. Fire from heaven is an image of imitation, recalling an Old Testament showdown to find out who is the true God. That's the import of that. And the earth beast is capable of that imitation, as it were. Breath is also an image of imitation, recalling the life-giving breath of the Creator. And it raises the bar for the type of imitation we're talking about. Speech, likewise, is an image of imitation, recalling speech by an object or a creature not normally capable of speech. So we have 3 images here, very amazing images that have Old Testament background and that just seem to make it relevant again to show my illustration, one of my favorite ones, of the big shoe, the shoes that are too big for the person wearing them. These are the shoes, fire from heaven, breath and speech. That's the metaphorical shoe we're talking about here. And who or what phenomenon is big enough to match it? And it seems my critique here is the claims for the Roman imperial cult simply proposes feet that are way, way too small for the shoe. We read on, marked on the forehead. Also it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or on the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell who does not have the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. This is a kind of crowded text, but let's see if we can put it together. Of course, these have popular representations. Someone some years ago thought maybe this was it, that this could be the mark of the beast, the sort of a mark, how you read the price on products in the store, and that they would put the similar mark on your forehead and you will be screened that way and you will be in or out. So the ancient illustrators here in the Jews' Apocalypse, they do it better here. This is the earth beast. There is the marking of them, and you have a social and economical advantage if you are marked. And here are people who are not marked, and they have something bad coming to them because they will be ostracized, they will not be allowed to buy or sell, and they might even be killed. That's how big this is. I have it here in the Trinity Apocalypse too. This is the beast orchestrating this thing. And then we ask, well, what about it in Roman imperial reality? Did any of these kinds of things happen? The truth is that the Roman Empire was quite tolerant. It wasn't very intrusive. It didn't really care that much if you believed this or that. It did care that you participated, but it didn't sort of probe you and subject you to a kind of inquisition about your beliefs. It was generally tolerant. And so is there any sort of reality like this that you have in the Roman Empire? And scholars have been hard-pressed to come up with anything that works. What about the Bible? Is there anything in the Old Testament that could help us here to point in a direction here? And here is what I would say is an excellent suggestion, a good place to start. Notice we want a mark on the hand or on the forehead. We want some language to suggest that. And we're reading in Deuteronomy in chapter 6, and this is what we read. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. Keep these words that I am commanding you today in your heart. Recite them to your children, and talk about them when you are at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you rise. Bind them as a sign on your hand. Fix them as an emblem on your forehead, and write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. There are, of course, two powers here seeking to mark, seal and mark. And this is God wanting to mark his followers, to imprint on them his word, his ways, his character, if you wish. This word ought here, the word ought that's translated sign, that is a revelatory sign, a sign that gives you information about the person whose sign it is. So have that as a sign. It is in some ways, you could say that it means that you have a kind of intelligent relationship with the reality of which it is a sign here. So this is a good candidate text for what is happening here, except, of course, that the charagma here, that we call the mark of the beast here, is a mark of something else. It isn't this message, it is another message. We can put this in these columns here. I put it under the headline that in the end, Revelation depicts a confrontation of signs. There is the seal of God, there is the mark of the beast. The text here, seal of God, do not hurt the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the servants of our God with a seal on their foreheads. And our text in Deuteronomy 6 should come to mind for what that might mean. And here the mark, we have the text, and it causes all to be marked with a mark on the right hand or on the forehead. And then we have a very close relationship between what the seal is outwardly and what it signifies inwardly, the inward reality, the relation to the name. John sees 144,000 having his name, God's name, and the name of his Father written on their foreheads. So here the name and the seal are very closely related. And sure enough, it's the same here. No one will be able to buy or sell except for the one who has the mark. That is to say, the name of the beast. A name in the Bible means character. It means what that reality, it describes profoundly the reality that lies behind the name. And here just a proposal about meaning, that the seal is representative of God, it is protective, and it is not coercive. There is no threat from God, unless so the seal is voluntary. But here, the mark, it is also representative of this reality. It is not protective, quite the opposite. And it is coercive. because those who don't take it, they risk being killed. That's what our text is saying. And under this headline that the dragon acts and God reacts, we have sealing here and we have marking here. And this is a scene from the intermission between the 6th and the 7th seal, where we have the winds of heaven being held back and the believers are sealed. And here we have in Revelation 13, obviously, two texts that are somewhat apart in the book of Revelation, but closely related in terms of the reality they describe. Here we have the marking here under the auspices of the beast from the earth. One more text, one more verse, verse 18. It's one of the most, what should I say, this, you can get a crowd on this one. You can say, tonight I have a lecture, I will explain to you the number 666, the number 666. I don't know if I could get a crowd in Norway or in America for that, but there has been a crowd of scholarship for it. And the number and the name. This calls for wisdom. Let anyone with understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is a human number. Its number is 666. So this text is way up there among texts in Revelation that have a kind of legacy in popular culture, like Armageddon, a few other things like it. And here the number is 666, as it were. Well, what does it mean? So again, here the preterist school of interpretation has very specific proposals. So I think we should consider them. This is again Richard Bauckham. He says that this idea of a number like this is part of an ancient way of using numbers as symbols for some reality. So there is a numerical marker, as it were, for a reality, and this is called gematria. That's the term for it. And the gematria, that is to say the number 666, the gematria does not merely assert that Nero is the beast. It demonstrates that he is. Nero's very name identifies him by its numerical value as the apocalyptic beast of Daniel's prophecy. That's a no holds barred. This is it. I'm committed to this view. I'm defending it. And this is a kind of sort of final answer for the preterist view of these things. I have suggested that there are some caveats about fire and speech and breath and so on. But here they come, and no less a person than Bauckham does it. And is it that way? So that's, again, the marking, and now also getting the number in there, and that is the number. So just to explain how this works, what the science behind it is supposed to be, it is true that the letters of the Greek alphabet have a numerical value corresponding to it. So there is the letter here that looks like an X, but it is pronounced chi or chi. That is 600, and here is X or Z 60, and here is sigma 6. So you can put this together, and if you have these three letters, they correspond to numbers. 600 for this, 60 for this, and 6 for this. 666. That's how the science of gematria works. And then this is Richard Bauckham's and quite a few other scholars who think that if you write the name of the Emperor Nero in Hebrew letters, you have to write it in Hebrew letters, and you take the numerical values of those letters, the numerical values in Hebrew writing, then you have the word here Neron and here Caesar. Neron, Caesar. And when you add up the numerical value of all these letters, you get the number 666. Well, so what it is not like you will jump up and down and say, if that is what you have to do to get this right, you might just be pushing the envelope a little too much. Most likely people think that, yes, this is the Emperor Nero. And yes, we can write the Emperor Nero in letters that makes it 666. And that is how just about all candidates have come into sort of play on the 666 issue. People know what it is, and then they try to do the arithmetic and make it sort of fit the pattern. So the text says this calls for wisdom. Let anyone with understanding calculate the number, arithmon, of the beast, for it is the number, arithmos, of a person. Its number, arithmos, is 666. So you are asked to calculate it, and if you have wisdom, you should be able to do it. But just a couple of caveats from the text of Revelation itself, a sort of a little bit of a pushing back a little. Here is the number 144,000. And I heard the number arithmon of those who are sealed, 144,000 sealed out of every tribe of the people of Israel. Yes, you calculate the number, but the number is symbolic. 144,000 is a symbolic number. And this could also reflect on the meaning of arithmos in Revelation 13:18. This one too, the number of the troops, this is the sixth trumpet. The number arithmos of the troops of cavalry was 200 million. I heard their number, arithmon. So 144,000 here, 200 million here, they are symbols. It's a symbol of the redeemed. That's the symbol of the army coming after. These two numbers are in some ways related to each other. They are contrasts of the two realities that are depicted. And in the end, the dragon will come out to deceive the nations at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, in order to gather them for battle, the number arithmos, as the sands of the sea. I am not going to weigh in here other than to say this. Does the call to calculate the number look for arithmetic skill? You do the math. Or does it count on spiritual perception to get it right? That is a different skill, more intuitive, more or maybe less demanding, less willing to push for a specifics when you hear the number evoke something and you understand what it is. And time for our summary. The beast rising out from the earth. But in Revelation 13, we had two beasts. We had the beast from the sea. We have the beast from the earth. We will have three angels in the next chapter, and we will have a harvest also in the next chapter. All of this is captured by Albrecht Dürer. But so, when the dragon goes away, he adopts a strategy of concealment rather than confrontation. He goes underground, he goes undercover. The sea beast as well as the earth beast are figures of imitation, my claim, and not, despite widely held views to the contrary, figures of parody. The parody hypothesis seems to me not to work. It is too weak. And here, now shifting to focus on the beast from the earth, the lamb-like beast, in the category of imitation in this chapter, we have the wound, the lamb, fire from heaven, breath, speech, the mark, and the number. All of those are figures of imitation. Much better than figures of parody. That is just too massive a project to fit a notion of parody, it seems to me. And still describing this, the connection between the seal and the name, seal of God and the name of God, and likewise between the mark and the name of the evil side, that is a matter of theological contrasts, clarity, and identity formation. What sort of people one becomes on one side or the other. And we can revisit it here again, this earth beast and the sea beast, and what they try to promote. The call to calculate the number has led many to do just that. Caution is advised. For now, it is best left as the symbol of a power that reeks with incompleteness and imperfection. Yes, what would the number be if it were a perfect number? You can sort of guess what that might be, but let's leave that for later. In chapter 13, the dragon acts. In chapter 14, God reacts. In the chapter dealing with how the dragon acts, the two images that should impress us the most is the image of the wound in Revelation 13, 1-10, and the image of the lamb in Revelation 13, 11-18. Those are the images that should have the largest shadow, as it were. Those are under the title, The Dragon Acts, here. And then in chapter 14, God reacts. Stay tuned.